in Sandton are confident that the country will achieve its investment target at the forum. South African project proposals presented to investors at the forum have a combined value of nearly 30 billion rand. SABC News anchor Nompumelelo Siziba joins us now live. A very good morning to you, Nompumelelo Siziba. What is the latest coming out from this conference that hopes to raise money for projects around the continent?
Thanks very much. Well, we are at the African Investment Forum. It's the third and final day, and of course those last-minute conversations are being had in the investment boardrooms, concluding deals across a number of different sectors, of course, that need to be invested in on the African continent. I have with me two ladies who actually came to the forum last year, the first time it started last year, and they had a business idea where they wanted to basically invest in female businesses, and they've set up a fund and they've managed to raise a whopping 72 million US dollars, and they're here to tell me what exactly they're going to be applying those funds to. I'm joined in our studio here by Polo Liteka, who's based here in South Africa, and Tokombo Ishmael, and they're both the managing directors of the Allathee IDF, and I'm sure the F there stands for fund. Thank you very much, ladies, for joining us. Great stuff.
Good morning.
Let me start with you, Tokombo. So now you've raised all this cash for this fund that's going to be applied for gender-specific projects. Just tell us what those projects are about.
I will do. Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. So the Allathee IDF Fund invests in women-led businesses. So what we try to do is we try to make sure that we invest in these businesses to provide them with business support so that they grow from an acorn to a large scalable business across the continent. Typically, these businesses have been overlooked by traditional private equity because the women are working away and doing what they need to do. You know how we are. We just make sure everything's going on smoothly. And these businesses are in sectors like health, financial services, so these are essential services, education, agribusiness is a big area for us. But we don't just look at women-led businesses and investing in women in the boardroom and management. We also look at the business value chain of businesses to see how they impact positively on women. So can women have better healthcare facilities and services? Can they have better access to education? And also where they're working as small scaleholder farmers, how do we improve them, give them the technical scale up so that they can have a better yield and therefore be better empowered? So we're looking at women from the boardroom all the way through to the fields, the farms, or the factory floor.
Excellent. So how do you ensure that the women that you invest in, or the women-led businesses that you invest in, do ensure that they give you your return so that you can return back to the investors who've invested in you?
Thank you. So it's really all in our investment decision-making process. We do have to look out for businesses, not just because they are women-owned, but that they actually make commercial sense. So we will test for things like scalability. What is it that we need to do as the investors and business partners, rather, for the entrepreneurs, to help them actually reach the potential to scale and grow and be sustainable in the long term. So our investment decision-making process actually does do that. We do a lot of financial modeling, as part of our due diligence. We look at things like that, and based on those models and the business case that we then have to develop and put in writing and convince an investment committee that is worthwhile. So it's very important right from the onset to have a view of what those returns will look like in the future.
It's very nice to see two strong black females, one Nigerian, one South African, working together to do these kind of projects. But just tell us, where across the continent are you applying these funds? Is it just in South Africa and Nigeria?
So we decided to start off small and in markets that we're very familiar with and we can reach very easily. So in West Africa, we are focusing on Nigeria and Ghana. And in the SADC region, we're focusing on Zambia, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, and South Africa.
And is there anything else that you want to add?
No, Paula has said it.
Okay. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you, in terms of the funding that you got, I understand that the African Development Bank was really the financier who got things going, who invested enough in you to get other people to invest in you.
That's correct. The African Development Bank is our anchor investor. We have other investors around the table. We have the FinDev DFI from Canada. We have the Dutch Good Growth Fund investments from the Netherlands. We have the Industrial Development Corporation of South Africa also coming. And we have the Bank of Industry of Nigeria and other investors that are coming to the table. And what's great about this is that we've got a great mix of international and African-based investors that all want to see this happen. And why do they want to see it happen? Because it's not just about charity, it's about an economic imperative. Yes. Because if we don't have if you look across the continent, over 40% of the businesses are owned by women, but only about 2% of them receive funding. And then if you look at that investment gap, it's not just about bridging that investment gap, but making sure that we're leveraging all the resources that we have on our continent. Because if you have women running businesses who have diverse perspectives and they're not being brought to the table, Africa can't reach its full potential. And there's even research that shows as well that when you have this diversity of perspectives, you have better decision making, you have better corporate governance, and you have innovation. Because when you have different perspectives around the table, each of us is thinking about what are the products and services that best meet all our tastes and preferences. So this is why we're here. And when our investors looked at that, and they looked at the statistics that show that when you have a diverse team, that team is 20% more likely to outperform companies that don't have a diverse team, where it's just a homogeneous, just the same, men in suits. We love men, but we need diversity. Yeah. And at the same time, those diverse teams are nearly 30% more likely to achieve superior performance. And so when we are looking at these women-led businesses, when we are looking at value chains where women are impacted as producers and as consumers, we're looking at it so that we can leverage that full potential for superior performance and have Africa reach its full potential.
In terms of accountability, Polo, how does it work? I mean, when do you have to return monies that have been invested in the fund? In terms of accountability on a 6-monthly annual basis, what sort of reports do you need to make back to the investors about how the funds are being used and being returned?
So it's a very highly regulated space that we operate in. Typically, a private equity fund has got a 10-year life. The first 5 years, you are expected to deploy capital into the entrepreneurial businesses that you want to invest in. And then the last 5 years is the time that you're expected to return capital and you know the yield to your investors. Typically, reporting is quarterly. Where we provide quarterly reports on the performance of the portfolio. We give, economic outlook. What is it that we are likely to be investing in the future? So we share information, for instance, about the pipeline, and really just giving, some more information around the performance of the individual companies and the specific activities that we as the investors have undertaken to help grow those businesses and support them in whatever way possible. And because we operate in sort of the impact space, we have to do a lot of hand-holding. We have to do a lot of business support. There's a lot of mentorship. She mentioned, for instance, improving governance in entrepreneurial businesses. As you would imagine, a lot of SMEs typically, just run the business and they don't, care too much about, the financial accounting, for instance. So we ensure that they are formalized. They themselves report on a regular basis. We would do things like attend their board board meetings. We typically would have representation on the boards, and in most instances again, when you invest, there is no board that exists. So we have to set it up and help them to, sort of do the compliance around those types of things. So that's typically what we do. I don't know whether there's anything else that you might want to add to that.
Ladies, I think it's a very holistic service that you're providing, and hopefully you are going to make an impact for those women and for the economies where you're investing. Thank you very much for your time. I was joined by Polo Leteka and Tokonbo Ishmael. They're both managing directors of Allathee IDF, and they're doing a great job giving a holistic service in terms of helping SMEs and entrepreneurs set up their businesses, run them professionally, and ultimately enable them to scale their business so that once they've withdrawn their funding, they're actually able to survive on their own, create jobs, etc., etc. And if this is a model that could be replicated across the continent, just imagine the kind of difference it could make for women and the economy. That's all from me for now. Of course, we'll have more interviews for you as the day progresses. Back to studio.